Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the A Squared podcast. This is going to be a unique episode of the A Squared podcast. We're going to have our Ramadan special.
And today we'll be going over the ideal protocol to help you have the best Ramadan you've ever had with one of the authors of the Ultimate Ramadan Guide.
Yeah, so last Ramadan, we put together this Ultimate Ramadan guidebook that covers in all the protocols that you can use to have the best Ramadan, taking in from stuff that I did during undergrad, medical school to study for board exams, during residency, to do night shifts, to do 28-hour shifts, to get by with good energy, to be able to do my worship, to do my fasting, and to still perform and do whatever it was, whether studying or working in the hospital. Additionally, this book, it's not the goal is not to cheat Ramadan or to make Ramadan easier or to do any of those things. The goal here is to help you deal with the difficulties of modern life. Now, you're in residency right now. You're doing a very hard inpatient month. Ramadan's coming around the corner. It might be more challenging for you. Thousands of years ago or 1,000 years ago, people didn't have to deal with these kind of things. So we want to give people tools to deal with that. On top of that, we're overall not a healthy society. People are sleep deprived. They are chronically dehydrated, insulin resistant, metabolically unfit, and they get to Ramadan and that pushes them over the edge. They're spending Ramadan with headaches and migraines and feeling miserable, not because of Ramadan itself, but because of their poor underlying health. We have tools for all those people, whether you're the busy mother of six, the doctor, the student, the person that has a challenge with Ramadan. We have some protocols for you to try out. Of course, discuss with your doctor first, for you to have the best Ramadan for worship and work.
And I think the biggest thing heading into Ramadan that people have to deal with is their mindset. There's a very small minority, unfortunately, nowadays who are very gung-ho and excited about Ramadan. They're planning for the month and they're ready and happy to deal with everything. But most people are probably looking at it kind of with a little bit of fear,
Anxiety.
Because they'll be tired, they'll be sleepy, they'll have a hard time at work, they'll be sleep deprived. And so mentality and coming in with the right mindset is probably the biggest thing, even just starting with how you're going to prepare for Ramadan.
Right. And a lot of people come in with Ramadan with the nocebo effect. So everyone knows about placebos. Those are when you expect something good to happen, you take a sugar pill and suddenly you start feeling good effects. The opposite of that is the nocebo effect. When you expect bad things to happen, you actually start experiencing bad side effects without even experiencing anything bad. And we all have this image in our minds of a family member laid out on the couch. It's 2 p.m. the first day of Ramadan. They're like, I have a headache. I get dizzy. I can't get up. And that kind of shapes our experience that this month is going to be challenging and difficult and that we're not going to be able to get through it. How can you go 14 hours or 16 hours, whatever it is, without food, without drink? It's so hard. Your coworkers are telling you, oh, you're skipping lunch. Are you crazy? What are you doing? So we don't want to have a nocebo effect. What we actually want to do is flip this into a placebo effect.
And one problem people have is sometimes they're like, oh, I've heard of the starvation mode.
Yes.
So I'm going to be in a starvation mode and this is why I'm feeling terrible during Ramadan. And that exactly goes back to the nocebo effect where you're making up things which actually aren't true and ending up having a worse result due to that.
You're suffering more than you actually would need to, quote unquote, suffer. I don't think anyone should suffer during Ramadan. Because what I will say, to give you guys some placebo effects for Ramadan, is that we are designed to fast. Now, we have a number of fuels in our body, right? And then, like, if you were to start your day at fasting, it's 5 a.m., what kind of fuels do we have available to us?
So you have a couple. One would be the glycogen stores in your liver.
Right.
One would be the glycogen in your muscles.
Right.
And 3 would be your fat stores.
Right. So if you break it down, we're going to do this. We're going to do some math right here for the audience. Let's say you eat sahur and you ate like 500 calories. Okay, you have 500 calories there you're going to burn through. That will probably last you a few hours. Then you have the glycogen in your liver. The glycogen in the liver is about 100 grams, depending on how big you are, how big your liver is. 100 grams of sugar, that's 400 calories, right? The glycogen is this fast dissolving sugar. It's stored in your liver. As soon as you get into hunger, you release that into your bloodstream, so you have fuel for your brain, the rest of your body. Additionally, you have another 500 grams, depending on how big you are and how much muscle you have, of glycogen in your muscle. So your muscle has enough fuel for 2,000 calories that can get you through the whole day. Like just from the sahur, the glycogen in the muscle and the glycogen in the glycogen in the liver, that's enough to get you through the whole day. It's almost already 3,000 calories right there. On top of that, each pound of fat
is 9 calories per gram.
Right, and that's probably 3,500 calories per pound of fat that you have available to you. So if you are somebody who's 30 pounds overweight, like many people, you have almost 30 days worth of calories, 3,500. Let's say you're burning 3,000 calories a day, you're very active, times 30 pounds. You can probably get through all of Ramadan never having to eat. I'm not telling you to do that. You should be eating suhoor and iftar and all those kind of things. But you have tons of calories. And in the book, I go into it and talk about all the calories that you have available to you. You're not starving in Ramadan. And most people are starting Ramadan, they're already overweight. Some people are underweight and they have problems. But you have the liver glycogen. We have strategies that will teach you how to have a good suhoor and good iftar, so you're very replenished for your fast. And on top of that, if you get really deep into the fast, you start to tap into ketosis, which you take fat that you have stored and make it into ketone bodies that can fuel your brain and other organs. Point is, if human beings, what would happen then? If human beings could not fast, what would happen like 10,000 years ago?
We would have died centuries ago.
Because our ancestors didn't have food available. They didn't have McDonald's, they didn't have Uber Eats, they didn't have any other stuff. We get our dates in little boxes. They'd have to go find dates on the trees, right? They didn't work out sometimes. There'd be bad harvest. They'd have to tap into fat stores and to glycogen and all these kind of things to get through the fast day. And if you are 4 hours into your fast and you're telling me you're starving, you're absolutely not starving. I mean, what's happening is you're used to eating breakfast and then a snack 2 hours later, and then lunch and then a snack and then dinner and then a post-dinner snack and then a post-snack snack and then a pre-bedtime snack. You're on a constant drip of food. You have a very bad relationship with food. This ain't good for you, I'll tell you that for sure. And then you come to Ramadan and now you're eating less frequently and you're freaking out and your body's not used to it. The good part is you can get adapted to this. These are all adaptations you have, whether it's ketosis, tapping into your liver glycogen. We'll talk about muscle glycogen a little bit later because you can't really tap into that easily. But nonetheless, we're talking about, over 90,000 calories.
Yeah. To you. So the truth is you definitely aren't in starvation mode and your body's adapted to this. You will be fine. The problem is that you haven't been adapted to fasting regularly. And for that reason, you'll have some side effects because you're not used to it. And one of these side effects would be headaches.
Right. So I think now that you have fuel available to you, the big thing that most people associate with Ramadan is headaches. And there's really probably 4 main reasons that people have headaches in Ramadan. I would say the first one is that they have low blood sugar or low fuel for the brain. So that kind of goes into the calories we talked about. They have a low relative blood pressure, or they're kind of dehydrated. They have caffeine withdrawal. This one is huge. Or they're sleep deprived. So we'll go into all 4 of these, how you can strategize around them, how you can optimize your day to not deal with those things and get by Ramadan. So that now instead of having a nocebo effect and expecting that headache to come on, we're going to empower you with the tools so you do not go into that. So which one do you want to start with, Adnan?
Let's start with low blood sugar.
Right. So low blood sugar. So people have experienced this before. You get hypoglycemic. You start feeling a little shaky. Your heart's racing. You look pale. This is not because your body's low on blood sugar. It's because you're not adapted to using your fuels that effectively. And if you're having this low blood sugar, 2 things. That's probably a warning sign you're metabolically not in the best place. The good thing is Ramadan kind of fixes a lot of those problems. But number 2, this is somebody who should be fasting way before Ramadan and getting ready. You should be adapted to this kind of fast. You should be fasting whether once a month, 3 days, the 13th, 14th, 15th of the lunar month, or Mondays and Thursdays. Some kind of fast that's coming in so your body gets adapted to Ramadan. You shouldn't be wasting the first week of Ramadan on this adaptation.
And it's interesting because there's so many hadith about and recommendations about fasting throughout the year or even before Ramadan, preparing. And it's not just for your spiritual benefit, but even for your physiologic benefit. Your body gets adapted to it and is able to more easily get in the groove if you've been doing practice sessions, in a sense, with fasting before. And
even if you don't want to fast, full Islamic fast for whatever reason, what you could do is something simple like skipping lunch. You can eat breakfast, that would assimilate suhoor, and then skip lunch and then eat dinner, so that you can kind of move your fasted period bigger and bigger, like how they do for kids, and you can get more adapted, and therefore you wouldn't have all of those problems. You could do like some kind of wet fasting, where you're drinking water during the day but not eating food to kind of adapt to the sugar withdrawal, and then you can fast Sunday days, like we talked about. But all 3 of these things help you optimize the cellular machinery. What happens is in your liver there are enzymes that help you produce ketones and glycogen and releasing all these things, and they're more effective the more you do it. It's a lose it or lose it type of policy. And that's why, if you notice, what happens the last week of Ramadan, you feel
a lot better.
Right, you're adapted, you're ready to go. But what happens is you've wasted the first 3 weeks of Ramadan. You're not at your top of your game. And then why not just do that beforehand? But nonetheless, let's say you are one of those people who have low blood sugar. We're going to help you build your optimal suhoor in the upcoming section. We'll come back to that in a bit. Now, there is a hack, though, I will say, that I discovered last year in kind of studying biochemistry again, that there is 500 grams of glycogen in the muscle. Now, the body, subhanAllah, the body is well designed. It does not allow this glycogen to be released into the bloodstream. Why? Because you need to keep glycogen in your muscle in case you have to run away from a lion or kind of chase after a deer to eat, whatever it is. Your body's designed to keep the glycogen in the muscle so the muscle can always have fuel for you to run away, and then your brain will rely on ketones. Now, the cool part here is if you use your muscles, you produce lactic acid, and that lactate can go back to the liver and recycle through the Cori cycle into glucose and make more glycogen. So theoretically, this might be counterintuitive. It's 4 p.m. on a fat Ramadan day and you're feeling tired and you're laying on the couch. You would actually get more energy if you were to go out for a brisk walk, liberate some of that glycogen and that lactic acid back into the bloodstream and back to your liver and back into your organs. So movement is a hidden secret way for you to actually have more energy during the day of Ramadan. It's funny because most people that are staying at home doing nothing all day, they have the least energy that I've ever seen during the day. So that's your hack. Go outside and move.
And in the beginning, it might feel like you're actually more tired for the
Right.
first day or two or a couple of days, but give it some time and definitely you'll be feeling a lot better when your body gets adapted to it.
Yeah, and then there are some supplements, like I always tell people, I don't like to start with supplements. Everyone's like, what's the supplement for Ramadan? I'm like, well, chill out. Supplements come later. Let's start with the lifestyle. Let's start with the metabolic systems and the machinery to be good. But there are supplements I found to be effective in personal experimentation and then looking in the data. There's L-carnitine. It's an amino acid that is found in meat, but you can be bought in over-the-counter and Amazon, all these things. It actually helps you transport more fatty acid, more fats, into your mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, as everyone knows it, and help you have more fuel available, so your mitochondria should be able to be more effective. And there's some data about that one being good for fat loss and metabolism and these kind of things. I've experimented taking like 2 to 3 grams of that at suhoor, good with benefits. There are some concern about side effects with that for TMAO, but that's covered more in the book if you're interested. The book, of course, will be linked in the comments or the bio or wherever you are watching this, on my profiles, whatever it is. Number 2, you ever tried MCT oil, Adnan?
I haven't personally, but I know the ketosis
Yes.
groups are very fond of it.
So there's something called MCT oil. It's medium chain triglyceride. It's a medium chain fatty acid. Unlike the long chain fatty acids that you might find in a saturated fat, like in a steak or in milk, whatever it is, it's medium chain, so it goes right into the liver. And it's easier produced into ketones, or it's easier to produce ketones from it. So some people find that taking that at suhoor can help them get into ketosis faster and get by. But overall, to put a bow on the blood sugar, prepare before Ramadan, train your liver, have a good suhoor, we'll cover that in a bit, and then use supplements if you need them.
How much MCT oil would you recommend in your experience?
Yeah, I see 1 to 2 tablespoons. Anything more than that, and you're going to have diarrhea.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're constipated in Ramadan, that's an option. But we also cover constipation in the book. I mean, literally everything you need for Ramadan, you got you covered in here. Next.
The next big thing is caffeine. And a lot of us, especially the ones who have busy schedules, are pretty much reliant on caffeine. We drink it throughout the day or take pills even. And this can be hard when during Ramadan, you're not able to take caffeine for 12, 14, 16 hours a day.
Right.
But there are solutions in terms of scheduling your caffeine or adding in a little bit extra something to help prolong that energy boost if you take it
Right.
in different points of the day.
But I will say, we got to give some caffeine some appreciation. Caffeine is the wine of the believers. That's what it was labeled, because Muslim countries, they didn't have as much alcohol as other countries. Ideally 0, and they didn't have bars and stuff like that, so the cafes were very popular. It's the wine of the believers. Additionally, some of the earliest use of caffeine was for worshippers that would use it in like Yemen overnight to do tahajjud. So this is a blessed drink, I would say. This is the drink of the Muslims. We use it. Turkish coffee is world renowned and famous, and we should use it for that intention. The what originally was used for was for worship. Now, if you want to use caffeine, this is the most used psychoactive drug on the planet. You're using drugs if you take caffeine and you drink coffee, FYI. You have to be responsible. You cannot have irresponsible use of caffeine. So I tell everybody that uses caffeine, you have 3 options before Ramadan. Number 1, get off caffeine completely. You have to taper off, use a protocol, and get off of caffeine. I have a whole tapering protocol available in the book. And I will mention the book is available to you for download for whatever you need. So taper off caffeine right before Ramadan and get off completely. Don't get back on. So what you could do is, like, if you're drinking 2 cups a day, you can go to 1 cup a day for a few days, then have a cup, then a cup every other day, and then off for Ramadan.
Because if you suddenly get off of it cold turkey, you're going to have withdrawal symptoms and feel even worse, which will be rough.
And yeah, and you're ruining your Ramadan day. You're having headaches. You're not feeling good. It's just not worth it, and you have to be responsible with that. I would say it would at least be 5 days for you to taper, ideally longer. The next option is, if you love your caffeine that much, is to wake up at suhoor and drink whatever coffee you would drink. So if you're a 2 cups a day coffee drinker, maybe you drink 1+ cup at suhoor, and then this is good for someone who's going to be up at suhoor, someone who's going to the hospital like Adnan, and they're going to be up anyway, so they drink their coffee and then start with their day. The third option, and the most interesting of these options, is that I found very useful, is using these new formulations of caffeine called extended release or slow release caffeine supplements. Now, this is really cool. You've tried this before, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens is, these are micro-encapsulated caffeines that, instead of releasing all at once like a coffee might, they slowly release throughout the day. Manufacturers have different claims of how long it is. I don't know how much I trust them. Point is, there's a couple of these products. I mentioned the ones I use. There's Genius Caffeine, there's Zoom XR, there's Vitasure, there's a bunch of different ones. And what's cool about them is you can take them at suhoor, and they will last you pretty much all day and give you slow, extended amounts of release of caffeine. And if you're somebody who sleeps after suhoor, instead of drinking coffee and then being alert and then you can't fall asleep, you can take the Genius Caffeine right before the Adhan Fajr, and then it won't kick in for another 2-3 hours. You get your little nap in, and you wake up. Not only are you energized from the nap, you're energized from the caffeine, so it goes together very well. So that's what I do. I try to, before Ramadan, I kind of wean down my caffeine intake, just so I'm not so reliant on it. And then I use the Genius Caffeine or the Zoom XR on my work days to be able to get up, because usually I'm at the hospital by 6:30, 7 a.m. anyways. So I stay up after Fajr and go through that. But there's, of course, benefits of caffeine. You can use caffeine at the end of the month too, when you're doing tahajjud and those long nights. The caffeine will be a very good use there. But caffeine.
And also keep in mind that this is for people who are working during the day. If you're a night shift worker, then obviously you'd schedule your caffeine doses before you worked at night.
Yeah. Speaking of night shift, a big problem people experience in Ramadan is sleep deprivation. Ramadan, people are like, I'm not sleeping as good. I don't know what to do. So we need to go into that. Now, you have problems with sleep in Ramadan?
I have problems with sleep the whole year.
We'll have a sleep episode very soon for you guys. We're gonna get into sleep and provide you some of the best resources available for that.
But I did notice that one issue I have with sleep, and I think a lot of people can relate, is, well, one, there's the time limitations. Right. If you go for Salah after Isha, then that'll take an hour or two, and then you're trying to do extra Salah during the night or before Fajr.
And you're waking up for Suhoor.
And you're waking up for Suhoor as well. And another thing is, people end up, your natural instinct after fasting for a day is to eat excessively. And when you eat excessively, you eat the wrong foods, and then you go to bed right after, your body's using up so much energy to digest the food, and you're not able to get quality sleep.
Right. So a couple of things to unpack there for y'all. What we will find in the literature is that when any kind of animals, including animals and humans, we'll say, has less food, they require less sleep, because less food is a signal for you to stay up and go actually hunt for food. So if you were to do Ramadan properly, like the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would do it, you probably wouldn't need as much sleep during Ramadan, because your body is not running as much food. And people that fast, whether they're Muslim or they're of a different persuasion, do know that their sleep is deeper and they require less sleep. The problem is we fast in a very poor way. We binge eat at iftar, we stay up all night, we go to Taraweeh, and then we go to the local coffee shop and do hookah, and then go to the different restaurants.
Eat greasy food.
And go to restaurants and drift with your, Civic SI and try to impress the ladies. But if you were to do Ramadan properly, you wouldn't have these issues. Now, solutions though. We can talk about problems all day. We can preach to the crowd, but we have to find some solutions. So I looked into the literature about sleep, and I noticed that the prophets before, many different civilizations, slept in a biphasic or polyphasic sleep pattern. And what that means is that instead of sleeping, 1 7-hour shift between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., you sleep in different chunks. Some people you find them on Reddit and these other crazy websites. They sleep 7 chunks during the day or 6 chunks. I don't recommend that for anybody. But the sleep style that I think is most effective for Ramadan is a biphasic sleep schedule, and this is more in line with the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would sleep after Isha. He would wake up before Fajr for the Tahajjud and pray Fajr Salah or take a little nap before Fajr, and then he would have a nap, a khaylula, a siesta, right after Dhuhr Salah. That would be the hottest time of the day. You take a nap and you rest up and recharge. And what I find is when I do this, I almost have 2 days in one. I have my morning day from Fajr to Dhuhr, and then I have my post-Dhuhr nap till Isha, and I have 2 supercharged days, and there's more barakah in that than the average person. Now, we can apply this to Ramadan. So like you mentioned, Adnan, sometimes in some places in the world, the time between Taraweeh and Fajr is only 3 hours. Sometimes it's very limited. So what we will do is employ a biphasic sleep method, which means you will sleep in 2 chunks. Now, what we've included in the PDF of the book is you have this own schedule. It's calendar. We'll put it up on screen here. That has Suhoor, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and Taraweeh listed on it. And you could draw and create your own sleep schedule. Now, I will introduce you guys to a couple of these sleep schedules that we've tested out and done in the past. What I will say is the goal here is to use the X plus Y system. You have your X sleep, which is your sleep at night, and your Y sleep, that's sleep during the day. Combine those together, that should add up to something reasonable, at least 6 hours, hopefully, so you can recharge your body and be able to get through your acts of worship. But of course, talk to your doctor about your sleep. We'll talk about the sunnah ideal. Like I mentioned, you sleep from Taraweeh till Suhoor. You wake up for Suhoor. You get your Suhoor, you stay up, you go to work, do whatever you think, and then you take a little nap after Dhuhr. So this is ideal for somebody who has early work or has the ability to nap, or someone who's at home working from home, or somebody can go to their car and nap. I've been known to do that during Ramadan. A common one that most people do, I'm sure you've experienced one, is the post-Fajr nap. Is that you go Taraweeh to Fajr, Taraweeh to Suhoor rather, sleep, and then you wake up, you eat Suhoor, you pray Fajr, and then you take a nap after Fajr. It's a common one that most people do. I don't find this to be effective. Do you find it effective?
Sometimes when I'm short on sleep, I feel like it helps me get a little bit extra in versus like sleeping only a couple hours in the night.
Right.
But it is very uncomfortable because you just ate a larger meal for Suhoor. And so the quality, I notice, isn't the best.
You wake up kind of groggy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have the extended release caffeine, this fits in nicely with that. I know that there's some of our scholars recommend against sleeping after Fajr, but they will also tell you if you have, like, you're a surgeon or you have a busy job or you're driving, you have to have adequate sleep. It's reasonable to do this. The other common one I notice is the early worker schedule. Someone who will sleep from Taraweeh to Suhoor, wake up at Fajr, go to work, come back to work. They don't have a time to sleep in the middle of the day. They're busy. They have calls, whatever going on in their lunch hour, and then they'll take a nap between Asr and Maghrib. So once again, it's not a recommended time to sleep according to Islamic scholars. After Asr or after Fajr, they kind of look down upon time to sleep. But if you're trying to optimize your Taraweeh so you can have more energy after iftar, this might be a reasonable option. Or you can combine the last two, what I call the double nap. Sleep in Taraweeh to Suhoor. Let's say you only have 3 hours then. Sleep another hour after Fajr, then another hour, hour and a half, 2 hours after Asr. And you put them together, and we'll have these all listed on screen. Another favorite of people, which I'm not a big fan of, but it's ideal for people during the summer or people that are
college students.
Yeah, college students. Is nocturnal Ramadan. You become a night owl. You stay up all night. You go to Taraweeh and you stay up all night studying. You eat Suhoor, hang out with your homies, like everyone does. Pray Fajr, and then you sleep from Fajr to Dhuhr, sometimes to Asr, unfortunately. And you are a night shifter. Not effective. Not a good idea because you're doing some circadian damage there. You're gonna end up gaining more fat that way because you're doing the circadian shift. See our fat and weight loss episode for more on that. But let's say, like, I actually employed this one when I was studying for my step 2 exam. I had a lot of studying to do. I was really behind on studying. I had studied during Ramadan because I had rotations. So I was mostly on nocturnal. It worked. It wasn't ideal. I had some consequences of it's funny when I tell my non-Muslim friends that I gained weight during Ramadan, they're like, "What?" But there's more food available. It's funny.
Yeah, actually, I remember doing it for various periods. I think it's easy to naturally gravitate towards that if you're in school, right? Because your schedule's shifted more, you have online classes, and that's the easiest in terms of just sleeping through the fast where you don't feel it. But and ultimately, then you could also like work out when you're like well rested and fed and things like that. But ultimately, I think you end up missing out on a lot of benefits of having that daytime wake period and sleeping at night with like the circadian rhythm shifts. And even missing out on some other benefits.
Right. And then, like I mentioned in the beginning, if you're not going to get as much sleep in Ramadan, you should try to prioritize the quality of the sleep. So we'll say quality over quantity. There's a couple things you could do. And we've mentioned these in other episodes of the podcast, but we'll talk about no phone before sleep. So that's a big problem that people have.
Yeah, and at the very least, at least try to have some kind of blue light blocking, which may help. But it becomes even more critical if you're having less and less sleep, that the quality becomes more and more higher quality, or you're suffering even more.
Right, and if what happens in Ramadan is people are so tired that they just get on TikTok and they start scrolling on Ramadan recipes or Ramadan trends and all the funny memes, whatever it is, and that blue light gets into your eye, it messes up your circadian clock, you're not making melatonin. Maybe when you were sleeping 8 hours, you had more of a chance to catch up and get some more sleep. But if you're only sleeping, 4 or 5 hours, that sleep has to be really good. Additionally, that's just draining you and having a cognitive load. So I would say no phone before sleep. And then you mentioned this one. No, not too much food before sleep, because sleeping on a full stomach is a problem.
Yeah, because again, all the blood and all their body is basically trying to digest the food, and that takes away from your ability to have quality sleep when you're in a rested state. So definitely try to minimize those portion sizes, minimize the amount of processed, greasy, higher calorie foods that you're taking in. I know a lot of cultural foods tend to be kind of on the higher calorie, higher fat side, but those take a lot more energy to digest and lead to you having a worse quality sleep, especially if you eat right before you go to bed.
Now, and the other issue is you need to follow a regular schedule. So what I would say is download the book, go into the section where we have the thing for you and make your own sleep schedule and then stick to it. Because what happens is the more calibrated you are to a schedule, the more ready your body is to sleep at those times, and the more ready your body is to wake up when you are used to being waked up. So within like a week or two, you're very adapted. You'll notice that if you slept biphasic, let's say you slept 4 hours a night, 3 hours during the day, your body would be so adapted to that you'd be able to flow very easily. But if you're doing different schedules every day, that becomes challenging. Now, we can also help you adapt to less sleep. And I found some things to be helpful. Like I always mentioned, not supplements come second, behaviors come first. But there are some things you could use, like caffeine, like you mentioned. Creatine has some data. I know Adnan is a big creatine consumer. Creatine has data for enhancing cognitive function during sleep deprivation. They've studied it on medical students and stuff like that. Everyone on TikTok's favorite supplement, ashwagandha.
I just ordered it, but I haven't started yet. So maybe you can.
Or creatine.
I just ordered ashwagandha.
Yeah.
But I'd
be careful with ashwagandha. You shouldn't be doing it too much. But if you're very stressed out, it's a long Ramadan day and you don't feel good, I would take it before my 28-hour shifts and do very well. Rhodiola.
I actually ordered that too.
Yeah, rhodiola is great. I mean, it's a rhodiola before this podcast. Rhodiola is an adaptogen as well. It helps you, what I call a nap in a bottle. It feels like you took a nap without taking a nap, kind of recharges you. It augments some of your stress markers. It's an emerging supplement that has more data on it, which would be interesting to try out. Like maybe at iftar, like say you're very tired, take it at iftar so you can get through Tarawih. You don't sleep too much at night, take it in the morning to get through your workday. The other one, sunlight. It's going to be important, and it's mentioned in the book, but it's going to be mentioned more in the future revisions of the book. Sunlight actually gives you energy because the light hitting your eye raises your cortisol levels, makes you feel more alert, and all these kind of things you can use. So if you're waking up after Fajr, instead of staying indoors, go outside, take your Quran outside, read the Quran outdoors as the sun rises, see the sunlight. That will help you have more energy, and then block light at night to get more sleep. And then naps and micro naps. Like sometimes if I'm really tired in Ramadan, I'll go in my car, drop a seat, 5 minutes, put my pager or my phone on my chest so in case someone calls me, I can wake up and I get 5 minutes of sleep. But that 5 minutes goes a long way.
Yeah, for me with naps during the day, it's a little bit difficult. One, because of work, but then also two, because I have contacts and it's hard to take them out, find a place to put them, wear new ones. So I actually will sometimes do the non-sleep deep rest approach where I'll take these guided meditations that you can find online. Dr. Huberman, I believe, has a sponsored type one, affiliated one that I like, but there's various ones on YouTube that you can look up, and these are like 10 to 20 minute guided kind of like resting meditation type things where they help your body relax and have been shown to help with, cognitive function, feeling rested, all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. And now we talk about three things. We talk about low blood sugar, caffeine withdrawal, sleep deprivation, and the fourth, and I think maybe the biggest thing that causes a lot of people headaches and problems and low energy in Ramadan is proper hydration. Number one, most of y'all are very dehydrated year round. I can see it on your face. I could see it in the way you behave. You guys are really dehydrated, kind of like raisins. But another problem is you come to Ramadan and you have these really stupid hydration strategies, and you think that we're camels. Okay, you can't wake up at suhoor, you're not hungry, and you down 4 cups of water and expect that to hydrate you. Because what ends up happening is you guys have all experienced this. You drink 4 cups of water at suhoor, and then you spend the next 3 hours peeing every 15 minutes. Everyone's experienced this, especially trying to sleep after Fajr. It's not pleasant. So you can't expect yourself to store water. We don't store water, but we have strategies we can use to uptake water. Now, Adnan, if you have a dehydrated patient and you don't have saline bags, what do you do?
So there's this thing called oral rehydration. And the way you can think about the whole hydration situation is, I know a lot of us took basic science in undergrad, high school, things like that. And we can put up a picture of kind of like the whole situation with, if there's a permeable membrane and solutes on either side of a container, the water will flow to the area that has more solutes in it. And our body is kind of like that. So if you hydrate a person with just water without increasing the amount of solutes that you give them, your body's not going to retain more water essentially. But if you give water and solutes, which would be things like sodium, then your body will hold on to more of that water.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, oral rehydration therapy you're talking about here, this is probably one of the most important innovations in medicine in history. One of the biggest causes of death globally is diarrhea. No one talks about this. But oral rehydration therapy, especially where people have like giardia and cholera and all these things, it's usually a liter of water, I think 5 spoons of sugar and less than a spoon of salt. 1 liter of water, 6 teaspoons of sugar, teaspoons, and half teaspoon of salt. Put together and drink that. That has hydrated people, especially when you don't have IV saline. Like we talk about in the hospital, we don't use just pure water into the vein, D5 water. We put water with saline or water with sugar or both. And you can hydrate that way. So what happens is you have transporters in your gut that use water, salt, and sugar to move across the membrane. So water can move more if you have salt and sugar available. So that's why there are all of these rehydration packets. We have no affiliation with them. There's Element T, Liquid IV, all these different hydration beverages. Everyone's trying to get into hydration because everyone's dehydrated. But you can use these packets, take them at suhoor to help upload more water into your body if you're not having a solute-rich suhoor. But if you're already, like for me personally, lately when I'm fasting, I just do a cup of milk. I'll tell you guys why in a second. A spoon of honey. I pour salt on it, and either milk or kefir or a cup of yogurt, whatever it is, and that is mega hydrating. So we'll put this graph up. They did a study of the most hydrating beverages, and they found that the oral rehydration solutions, of course, are the most hydrating, but skimmed milk is either as hydrating or more hydrating than the oral rehydration solution. More hydrating than water, more hydrating than anything else because of the solute in it. Milk already has sodium and potassium and fat and all these different things in it, and lactose is sugar to help you hydrate. So, point is, you could either have a meal that has salt and sugar in it, like if you were to eat dates and something salty, not too salty, because if you get too much salt, you go the other way and you get too thirsty. A meal that has some sugars, some salts in it, like let's say a bowl of yogurt, some dates with some salt sprinkled on, and a cup of water. That would be good. If you're in a rush and you don't have time to do all that, a electrolyte packet in a cup of water, also great. But the goal is to have some sugar, some salt, and some water. And we'll have a graph of all the different hydration beverages. And you can, if you don't want to buy these expensive rehydration solutions, I've made my own before. A 4th teaspoon of salt, some lemon, and 8 to 16 ounces of water. Of course, if you have hypertension, you shouldn't be doing this. If you're on medications that change your salt, diuretics make you pee out more, you have heart disease, your doctor tells you to stay away from salt, don't do this. This is for people that are healthy at baseline. They have normal blood pressure, but then they feel lower during the day, especially people that stand up, they feel dizzy, they get orthostatic from Ramadan. And I've had like maybe hundreds of people at this point DM me like, oh my God, I used to always get dizzy and lightheaded in Ramadan, but I did this electrolyte thing that you told us about. And we've been posting about this for 2 years now. And they're like, this is the first time I don't have headaches during Ramadan. Point is, but talk to your doctor. And then if you're an athlete, there are some other tricks you can try that will be listed in the book.
Yeah, so it's important to be kind of aware of how much sodium you're taking in. If you're taking a lot of ethnic foods, some of those have tons of sodium in. If you're eating like prepackaged meals in the morning, some of those have tons of sodium. Sorry?
Leftovers from last night.
Leftovers from last night. You may be having way too much sodium, and maybe that's why you're thirsty during the
Yes.
day and dehydrated. But on the other hand, some people, they tend to eat relatively simple in the morning, maybe like toast and like a fruit or something like that, and they don't get a lot of sodium.
You're right.
So for those people, like me personally, I tend to not eat a lot of sodium throughout the year, and I tend to eat a little bit more healthfully. But for those people that aren't getting enough sodium, having that extra, like I use liquid IV personally in the mornings for a suhoor, those tend to help me a lot with feeling less dehydrated throughout the day and performing better, feeling less dizzy and things like that. So always try to be aware of how much sodium you're taking in. And sometimes you might have to experiment. Maybe try a liquid IV or an element for a day or two and see if you feel better. If not, then maybe you can cut back on that.
Yeah, and then what happens is your kidneys actually get more effective as Ramadan goes on. Are better hydrated people, and people that lived, in the past had more adapted kidneys. Nowadays, we have this really poor habits around hydration, and we'll have discussions about that in the future. But your kidneys get more effective at retaining sodium. But what happens is if you just flood it with just pure water, with no food, nothing, no electrolytes, nothing, you mess around with your antidiuretic hormone, other hormones that help you maintain fluids. Your kidney goes like, hey, there's a bunch of fluid available. Let's just pee it all out. But then as the month goes on, your kidneys will get more adapted. We have a bunch of regulatory mechanisms for fluids because we always joke around in med school that the kidney is the most intelligent organ in the body. Now, you've hydrated properly. You have your caffeine protocol. You have really good blood sugar control, and you know how to sleep in Ramadan. Let's talk about food.
So people are always like, oh, what should I eat? I mean, most people will end up eating with their families and just eating kind of what they eat. A lot of, cultural food that tends to be, again, very low in protein, very high in fat, high in carbohydrates, very processed, very greasy, kind of very rich, heavy foods, unfortunately. And some of that is a little bit difficult to manage. You don't want to be the odd one out, not eating any of your family's food and just eating your own like chicken and broccoli or whatever. But there are ways that you can kind of change the proportion of things on your plate to have a better ratio of things for a better suhoor and iftar.
Right. And I have some guidelines I use to kind of dictate that. I'm not going to tell anyone not to enjoy what their mom has cooked. But what I would say is, like, number one, don't skip suhoor. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that there's barakah in suhoor, and we should take that blessing. My focus in suhoor is always to optimize my hydration because I have a very intensive job. I'm walking 12,000 steps in the hospital. I usually work out fasted. So I need to optimize that hydration. I use a healthy combination of fats, carbs, and proteins because I want the food to slowly release, just like you have slow release caffeine. You can have your food slowly release by slowing down digestion with fats and proteins and having carbs for instant bolts of energy and having a more well-rounded meal that doesn't get digested too quickly. I like to replenish my glycogen stores. Like we talked about, the glycogen is stored in the liver and the muscle. That gets replenished at iftar and suhoor because you're probably draining it during the day, especially if you're more active. Taking honey, taking fruit, taking very simply digestible carbs, and that can get stored in your sugar in your liver for later. I avoid overdoing the salt intake because this increases thirst. I don't underdo it either because that will make my blood pressure a little bit low, especially if you're prone to low blood pressure. And then I would tell people, eat to satiety without overeating. It's a fine balance. A lot of people, they need this to rewire their relationship with food. But nonetheless, that would be my suhoor guidelines. And then I have more examples in the text going over different examples. Greek yogurt, kefir, dates, fruit, eggs, oatmeal, typical stuff. You have to know your body, but just don't be toxic. Then, iftar now. This is where Adnan talks about you're going to eat oily samosas and fried foods. There's a big debate. Who started samosas?
Sambusa
it's
or samosa?
Like, where does it originate? We can decide that in the comments. But iftar, it's a problem because unfortunately, it's a month of fasting, but we hyper-focus on food.
Yeah, and so usually iftar is kind of like a big feast that everyone has. The adhan goes off and people are just scarfing down plates of food, tons of processed carbs, tons of oily meats, not the best foods. And then they're also missing out often on praying the salah early. They're bloating themselves, so they have a hard time making the tarawih if they even make it, or they make it late.
Yes.
And so it's a bad situation spiritually and physically because they're kind of setting themselves up for a poor spiritual intake. And then also it even ends up messing up their comfort in the moment and their sleep throughout the night.
Right. So this is what my protocol for avoiding a food coma in Ramadan. And a lot of you guys need to take special notes here. What I say is, number one, the iftar adhan goes off for Maghrib. You break your fast with some dates or water or something light, some fruit, whatever it may be. And then before going into your meal, go pray Maghrib Salah. So you what you're hacking here is that there's a delayed response to satiation from your stomach. So you want the dates and the water, the food to kind of hit your stomach. You go pray Maghrib. You can focus on your Salah. And then when you come back from your Salah, some of those food has hit your brain. You feel satiation, so you don't feel as prone to binge. Then you eat the rest of your meal, but you don't go to full satiation. You kind of go before that. You cut the brakes a little bit early with the knowledge that, hey, I can go eat later. I don't have to feel like I'm in starvation mode, that I'm not going to be able to eat later. I can eat before Taraweeh. After Taraweeh, I have some more options to eat. And this is how you get away from the food coma, because what I notice is the adhan will go off, they'll eat about 2,000 calories in about 10 minutes, and they'll be sitting on the couch with stomach pain, diarrhea, bloating, and they're just getting fat. By the end of Ramadan, they look like complete garbage. They've lost muscle. They look bad.
So I remember even hearing a couple of years ago how like it was something like 80 people died in the Middle East somewhere from overeating, which I don't even know how that happens during Ramadan.
I know. There's some researchers that wanted to study Muslims during Ramadan. They were like excited to study fasting. Like, hey, it's easy to study these people. They're probably losing weight. They're eating so healthy. They're like, hey, these people didn't even lose weight during the month. And if they did, it was just like water weight, and they regained it within a week after Eid. So that's not a problem with Ramadan. It's a problem with the people that are fasting on Ramadan. Ramadan, ideally, you should come out of it looking fresh, healthy, younger, more
Metabolically healthy,
better blood pressure, better blood sugar, all these kind of things. But we'll talk about that in a bit. But overall, iftar, avoid binge eating, eat enough protein. That's going to be good for satiation. Eat with your family. Don't be that guy that doesn't want to eat with the family. But in moderation, just be careful, be balanced. Try to focus on whole foods that are unprocessed. Your meats, your vegetables, your fruits, stuff that doesn't come in a package. You want to avoid over or under eating. We'll talk about weight loss in Ramadan in a bit. And then you want to eat foods that make you feel good. You don't want foods eating that make you feel bad. They're very, spicy foods that hurt your stomach on the way in and on the way out. And stuff that makes you like oily, that hurts you and makes you not able to sleep, with heartburn, all these things, because every moment in Ramadan is precious. Now, despite how precious Ramadan is, what's the question everyone asks in Ramadan?
What's your workout split, bro?
I know. Listen, bro. What you do in Ramadan is not going to make or break. This is 1 month. The focus should be more on the spiritual, not on the physical. If your focus primarily in Ramadan is on the physical, you've missed the point, my friend. The point is to take physical restriction and transform that into spiritual power. Right?
Yeah, and I know it's like, especially like I know we both had phases where we were like super into lifting, and that was like that focus. At least for me, I remember there were years where it was like the focus of my life, where everything had to be scheduled so I could have the best workouts, I could lift the most. And even in Ramadan, it was like, how do I maximize everything so I can maintain muscle or even gain muscle during Ramadan? And there were actually months in Ramadan that I had where I ended up making progress in the gym, like getting leaner, gaining muscle, setting PRs. But unfortunately, I felt like sometimes that came at the cost of maybe my spiritual health, in terms of maybe I could have done more salah, maybe I could have done more taraweeh, I could have done more ibadah during the day or the night. And I think looking back, I'd probably have switched out some of those like lifting gains for spiritual gains, since those are the ones that'll, last with us forever. So I think it's easy to think of Ramadan as a moment, especially one, if you're like a gym bro who's like hardcore into lifting, you want to make Ramadan be that the time where maybe you can make gains or even like limit as much muscle loss as possible. But even for other people, general people who think like, oh, it's a fasting period, maybe I can lose weight, I think the focus should ideally be, like Abu was saying, to focus more on your spiritual health and try to more maintain what you have or minimize any kind of losses during Ramadan, which are honestly less likely to happen, especially if you've been exercising regularly throughout the year.
Yeah, and here's the reality. 1 month, you're not going to lose muscle. If you're losing muscle, you're probably already catabolic and pathetic to begin with. But I'll give you a tip. We'll give you tips here on how to keep your muscle. What I do in Ramadan is I use Ramadan as kind of like a deload period to offset any kind of nagging injuries, heal. I focus less on the gym. So when I come back from the gym, I'm replenished, I'm fresh, and I end up having amazing gains in the weeks after Ramadan.
Yeah, so even like if you look back at a lot of the elite Olympic weightlifters, like Chinese, Russian lifters, they would have an intense season for several months, and then after their big competitions, they would take even sometimes not even lifting at all for a month or two, so that their body could recover.
That's good for that. But let's say you want to maintain muscle mass. That you're very worried about that. You work very hard for the last few months to gain some muscle. Maintaining muscle is about how much protein you're eating, how many calories you're eating, how much training stimulus, and how much recovery you're getting. So we'll say sufficient protein. You probably need close to 1.6 to 2.6 grams per kilogram body weight. So if you weigh 100 kilograms, about 160 to 220 grams of protein.
Usually ends up being around 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight.
Right.
Yeah.
And what you could look at there is, you have 3 good windows to eat protein. That's sahur, at iftar, and after tarawih / prior to sleep. So if you were to eat 30 to 60 grams of protein each one of those windows, let's say a protein shake with 30 grams and some kind of food that has 30 grams, so 60 grams at sahur. Iftar is like 2 pieces of meat, or a meat and a protein, or a vegetable source of protein, and beans, or a vegetarian source of protein rather, and a protein shake, and then another protein shake later on, or some kind of combination of that. You get up around 150 to 180 pounds, 50 to 180 grams of protein just from that, and then you get your protein intake. And then caloric intake, I would say if you're trying to maintain muscle mass, you shouldn't try to be cutting too much on the caloric intake. Eat around maintenance during Ramadan. You should have some training stimulus to keep the muscle. But here's the cool thing. Muscle memory, right? So even if you were to not train during Ramadan and you lost some relative amount of muscle, the moment you come back to training, you'd regain that back very quickly because of muscle memory. But if you kept the stimulus high during the fasting days, you'd be able to maintain more of that muscle.
And what's actually nice is that the amount that you need to stimulate the muscle just to maintain is a lot less than the amount you need to try to promote it to grow. So even if you're not working out 6 or 7 days a week or 5 days a week anymore, even a couple hard sessions, 1 or 2 a week, 3 a week, if you go really hard, you train smart, focus on whole body training, major muscle groups, compound lifts, things like that, you can get an efficient workout in a couple of times a week and still have all of your muscle that you had before.
Yeah, and I think they've done some studies where 1/9, so 1 out of 9. So if you take your sessions in 9 days and divide that by 1, if you get one of those good sessions, you'll be able to maintain your muscle mass. So very easy to maintain. And the fourth thing is sleep and recovery. So like we talked about in the sleep section, optimize that. Shouldn't sacrifice your spiritual gains for sleep, but you should be optimizing sleep. And if you want to maintain your gains, that might mean sacrificing some social activities after tarawih to get some good sleep for your muscle. Now, when do you train during the day?
So this is actually a question, especially when I was hardcore in the gym, I get from a lot of other Muslims wondering when the best time to work out would be. I think in an ideal situation, if you didn't have a job, it would be nice to train in a period where you had some pre-workout meal and then you're able to get a post-workout meal and then still get enough sleep. So that would be during the non-fasted hours. However, I think most of us have like a day job, and I find the best time where I could get a meal in peri-workout, but then also have enough energy to do my workout and then still have time for religious duties and things like that would probably be right before iftar. I've tried things like after fajr, but if you do your workouts early in the day, you end up feeling hungry throughout the day. Thirsty. And then you don't have like that post-workout meal and protein bolus, which could be offset by your daily protein intake or your pre-workout protein. But I find the best thing to be right before iftar for an hour or two, depending on the day. And then I have my post-workout meal with iftar. And then the first couple of days would generally be painful as I'm not adapted. But then, over the course of the week, it ends up becoming pretty commonplace. And I find after a week or two, I'm pretty much lifting what I used to lift, honestly. And then I'm able to still put out the same output as before. How about you?
So my go-to is right after Asr. So that's like, an hour or two before thought. I know I can train hard knowing to expect food and fluids to come after that. If I've optimized my hydration at sahur, I'm still pretty well hydrated. Come that time, it's that slowly caffeine trickling in my blood. The other option, like I mentioned, would be after tarawih. That's not ideal if you have to sleep and go to work, but it might be more ideal for muscle production. If you're a real gym enthusiast, and let's say you don't have family obligations, you don't have iftars to go to, you're kind of a loner, or you're away from family, studying abroad, what you could do is you could go right after Maghrib. So I've seen people break their fast with like dates and water and pre-workout, and then go work out, shower, get dressed, go to the masjid for tarawih, and then after tarawih, having a big meal. That's an option too.
A little bit harder to stick by probably though, because it's easy to binge after
Exactly.
after Maghrib.
Exactly. And then before suhoor, if you're really dedicated, you could wake up earlier and work out. But of course, you're missing out on the tahajjud salah. After fajr, like you mentioned, is some people do that, but I find that to be miserable because you're thirsty all day. But you gotta find what works for you and then stick with that.
Ideally, focus on getting it in and then focus on optimal timing.
Yeah.
In that order.
Right. And then people always ask us, how do I lose weight in Ramadan? And the funny thing is, it's rare to find people that actually sustainably lose fat during Ramadan and keep it off afterwards because our lifestyles are not optimized. Now, what I will say, I tend to suggest people not focus on weight loss during Ramadan. And there's a number of reasons there. Number one, you're in a sleep deprived state. And when you're sleep deprived, the weight loss that comes off, a lot of times it's lean weight. So you're losing muscle instead of fat. You're already stressed out. So you're already pushing your system. You're fasted. You have your work. You're sleeping less. And that state makes it harder to diet and makes it more likely that you're going to lose more muscle. And you're missing the point of Ramadan. Ramadan is not about body composition. It's about spiritual composition. But what you can do is use Ramadan as a bridge to healthier living. Like we talked about, a lot of us have a constant trip of food that we're exposed to daily. If you use Ramadan, I was like, hey, I don't need to eat 7 meals a day. I can only eat once or twice a day and feel fine and be very productive. Then you can take those habits that you learned during Ramadan and transfer them after.
And also another thing is when you're fasting, you do have, hunger pains throughout the day, especially as your body adapts to it. But another thing is if you're in a caloric deficit, you have extra stress on your body and your mind often is a little bit more food focused. And so that even takes away from your salah even more. So that actually has spiritual impacts in other ways as well, since you're focused on other things and you're not able to focus, you're not as sharp, your concentration suffers even more. So really weight loss during Ramadan isn't ideal because of composition rules, like increased
demands.
Exactly. And even with spiritual health. So definitely not recommended.
During Ramadan.
During Ramadan.
Yeah. After Ramadan, yeah, good idea. Look at our weight loss episode, you'll learn more. Considerations for the Muslim student. We'll switch away from the fitness. We've been students at Ramadan. Like all of our medical training, we were fasting in the long months of the summer mostly for medical school and beyond. Now, what can a student do? So like we said, no nocebo effect. You want to have placebo effect. You want to use the barakah of the month to optimize your Ramadan and be able to study. So I put together 6 points that I thought helped me during Ramadan. The first one is optimize sleep. And we had a whole sleep section. You want to focus on sleep quality. You want to really drill that in because you make your mental gains. You learn the subjects during sleep and you retain them then. You might learn it while you're studying, but the retention comes during sleep. I find the best time to study during Ramadan is immediately after Fajr. I have my suhoor, I drink some coffee, and then I get right into the work. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ asked Allah to bless the time after Fajr for us. So that's a good time to study. I would say make it count. I've seen Adnan study between sets at the gym.
I still do.
Yeah. So there's be very few windows for you to get quality study time during Ramadan. So if you have a study window, hit it and hit it hard. Be focused. Get away from your phone. Don't be distracted. Actually study. I see people, they say they study for 6 hours, but they actually only studied for like 40 minutes. And the rest of it was on TikTok and being wasteful. Number 4, use the hydration and the suhoor tips we talked about earlier. Number 5 is to adapt to the fast prior to Ramadan. So like if you're a student and you know you're going to be studying for like the MCAT during Ramadan, you better be adapting before Ramadan. So when Ramadan comes around, you're not wasting time adapting. You're already adapted. You can study while you're fasted. And then this is the blessed month. So you ask Allah, you make dua for you to be blessed in your studies. And you'll notice that the studies you do go farther than baseline.
I think also it's important as students, you're often in a more social setting, constantly going to different events and being around different people. So it's important to regulate your social interactions even more during Ramadan. Sometimes you might have to step back from different groups, especially if they're a little bit more social and taking up more time, because that takes away from time, precious time that you have to study or to do salah or to sleep even. So be mindful of your social interactions where you're spending time on the internet with friends in person. And that's an important consideration as well.
Now, to bring us all home, I want to put this all together and talk about what a day in the life of in Ramadan looks like for me. So, day in the life of Ramadan, putting it all together. I'm optimizing my work. I'm I'm optimizing my muscles. I'm optimizing my religious obligations, memorizing Quran, reading Quran, doing all these things. Number one, I wake up in time for suhoor. I have my optimized suhoor, which is going to have dates and yogurt and a protein shake, some liquid IV, some carnitine, and some extended release caffeine supplements. This is going to give me energy for the whole day. I'm ready to rock and roll. I'll shower, get dressed for work, and head to the salah, to the masjid for Fajr Salah. I'll pray for Fajr and Jama'ah, get the blessings of that, and head straight to the hospital for work. Prepare for the day. If possible, skier, I will get some sunlight as I'm walking into the hospital or right after Fajr to allow my circadian rhythm to be set, to get more energy throughout the day, and to be have that wakeful boost. If we get to lunchtime and everyone's eating lunch and I'm not too busy, I'll try to take some kind of nap, whether in the car or in the call room, or do some NSDR like Adnan mentioned earlier. If I don't get that, I'll just try to take a micro break, no phone, nothing, just kind of sit down and let my body regenerate. I complete the rest of my workday. I head home, I pray Asr, and then I go to the gym if I'm having some energy, usually about 3 times a week during Ramadan. We'll have my workout, or if I'm feeling not up to the workout, I'll just take a brisk walk. That'll liberate some energy for me to use for my muscle, liberating that muscle glycogen. At iftar time, I will implement the anti-binge protocol. We'll eat some dates, water, pray Maghrib, and then go back and eat the rest of the meal. No cell phone. This should be family time. It should be precious and be focused. If time allows, that's a good window after iftar to have some Quran recitation or reading or memorization, whatever it may be. And then you head to the masjid for Asha and Taraweeh. After Taraweeh, there's temptation to go out with friends, do things. I would say immediately head home. Avoid excessive socialization. Every now and then is okay. And avoid your cell phone, avoid social media, and go to sleep. If you need it, you might need a pre-sleep protein shake or snack here to kind of supplement your protein needs. You sleep early, you wake up, and repeat at suhoor. Anything you'd add there?
I think that's a great routine and something that I think a lot of people would benefit from trying to implement. Some of my foods are a little bit different, but I think it's important to just find whatever foods work well for you in terms of, higher protein meals and, getting enough of the macro and micronutrients, things like that. I think an important consideration though would be it's good to have a solid day, but sometimes people will end up maybe getting lax on like the weekend or, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, things like that. And sometimes that can mess up your whole cycle for like the next couple of days. Right. So as best as you can, I know it's hard, especially on the weekends, try to keep that routine because that'll actually help your body get into a good flow, get into a good rhythm, so you're not extra groggy or extra tired, extra hungry or thirsty during the early part of your work week again.
Right. So yeah, the summary is find what works for you, optimize that, and then go from there. If you want to find out all the Ramadan protocols and interventions you could try, you could look at the Ultimate Ramadan Guide. We'll have that linked below. Drop your questions below. We'll try to reach out and respond if possible. And we hope you have a Ramadan Mubarak.